Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with FemAce and Vivi? Part 1. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Under the shroud of night on the deck of the Orojackson, two men drank together in relative silence for the last time. One of the men was seated on a small stool, immersed in his own thoughts while he drank. However, the man took a pause so he could gaze into his glass and see his reflection off the surface of the sake in his hand. "We've sure come a long way, haven't we?" the man asked as he noticed his blonde locks have began to fade white and his face began to wrinkle. The second man, who was leaning off of his friend's backside, chuckled before chugging his alcohol. Then, by removing his lips from the bottle, he made a sound of satisfaction. "Ah, we sure have, Rayliegh," the man agreed before the two entered a silence once more. Rayliegh gripped hard onto his glass, nearly breaking the fragile cup. It had been a whole year since he last saw his captain and best friend, leaving Rayliegh with so many questions, but so far next to no talking was accomplished. Roger. "You know, Rayliegh," the king of pirates began, cutting his friend off. "After we conquered the Grand Line, I asked myself, what other adventures could my life hold? What could I do next?" Rayliegh remained silent, unable to answer his friend's questions. "To be truthful, I didn't know the answer myself. So that is why I left and began to travel on my own," Roger revealed, but left out the most important detail of where he went. "I must have traveled the entire world in my search." Rayliegh couldn't take it anymore, his anger getting the best of him. "Damn it, Roger. Where have you been this past year? Without you the crew fell apart and all that remains now is you and me," Rayliegh shouted in rage, creating large cracks around his feet by using his hockey. Roger was unmoved by his vice captain's outburst. Instead, he began to drink once more. "You truly want to know?" Roger asked in a low and serious voice. Rayliegh nodded. "Yes, I believe that I deserve an explanation," the pirate replied, his anger slowly receding back. "Well, the truth is, I found love. Well, to be more precise, her name is Portgas de Rouge," Roger explained further before grinning ear to ear. "It's hard to believe, but in a few months' time I will be a father." Rayliegh was taken by surprise, never imagining Roger was going to have a child. "Roger, that's wonderful news, but what if the world government catch wind of your child?" Roger's smile faded and he let loose a sigh. "I would protect my child, but my sickness is growing worse, Rayliegh." The king of pirates took a drink of his sake before continuing. "So I'm turning myself in, and before you say it, I've already made a plan to keep my child safe." "Roger, you can't do this. If we look hard enough we could find you a cure." "Rayliegh, I didn't come here to discuss false hope," Roger explained, cutting his friend off once more. Rayliegh gritted his teeth. "Then why did you come here?" the vice captain asked in low and bitter voice. Roger removed his arm off of Rayleigh's back and began to walk. "I wanted to speak with you one last time, and I wanted to leave you with one final order." Roger spoke truthfully as he gazed at the side of his ship for the last time. "When I'm gone, I want you to find happiness like I have. I want you to have a family and live a happy life. This is my last order as your captain." Rayliegh spun around and looked to his friend with wide eyes. "How can I live a happy life knowing my best friend is dead?" Rayliegh asked, his voice sounding broken and enraged. Roger turned to face Rayliegh and gave the man a wide grin. "I'm not going to die, partner." Day of Roger's execution. The day was the day that the entire world watched as one man kneeled at the top of an execution platform. Located in the heart of his own hometown, which was a decently sized area only a few miles away from Reverse Mountain called Lodetown. Many gathered in the town itself and cheered for the death of the Pirate King, while others silently spectated and struggled with the impending death of a close friend. However, there were the few who either refused to watch due to their connections to Roger, or simply because they didn't want to watch as the world government earned their first and final victory over the Pirate King. Though while all this went on, one Silver's Rayliegh fit into the group of people who were unable to see his friend off the world, thanks to the Marines wanting to capture and execute him as well. The little surprise, Rayliegh wasn't too hurt about his absence at the execution. Who would really like to stand by and watch helplessly while their best friend is killed before their very eyes? Rayliegh certainly wouldn't wish to do so, especially after he and Roger had already said their goodbyes. So instead, the Dark King chose to spend his day in a manner he found more appropriate, drinking alone in an empty bar located at Grove 13 of the Sabati archipelago. "More," the former vice captain ordered while slamming his empty glass onto the counter. The bartender, a middle-aged woman who goes by the name Shaki, sighed. "I think you've had enough, Rayleigh-san," the raven-haired beauty advised. "Besides, your captain wouldn't want for you to be drowning your sorrows away." Rayliegh simply nudged his glass forward. "The lectures can come at different time, for now pour the sake," Rayliegh ordered again, but this time Shaki complied to his request. Beer, just drink then. Shaki spoke with a small hint of irritation before she retrieved a cigarette and gave it a light. Then by bringing it to her lips she took a deep breath before exhaling a cloud of smoke. Rayleigh quickly drank the fresh sake given to him and sighed while closing his eyes. I'm sorry for my rude behavior, Shaki. The Dark King apologized before the bar fell silent. Shaki opened her mouth to speak but was stopped by the abrupt sound of the bar door slamming open. Shaki-chan, I'm back. A loud and cheery voice announced. Rayleigh shifted his gaze over his shoulder and was left speechless by the new arrival. A woman, to be more accurate, who was dressed in a dark orange jacket with a high collar. Her midsection was left exposed, however, due to the size of the jacket. The Dark King blushed as he watched the woman's hip swing as she approached the counter. Just like her jacket, the woman had even less clothes below her belt line. Since the only other item of clothing she had were very tight black shorts, which were held together with a white belt. However, the woman's beauty didn't stop at her body. No, her face was that of an angel, with beautiful creamy white skin and long cascading red hair. Which Rayleigh had to admit he thought was gorgeous, but also familiar at the same time. Shaki looked between the new arrival and sighed. What are you doing here, Kushina? The barkeep asked, her voice not sounding thrilled about Kushina's arrival. I thought you went off to watch the execution. Kushina's face twisted into a frown. You wouldn't believe how many people are gathered in the square right now. It's ridiculous, and they are all there for what? To see a broadcast of a single man being executed. The red-haired beauty rambled while taking a seat by Rayleigh. It makes me sick, to be honest. I told you earlier that you would get upset, but you refused to listen to me. Shaki replied while handing Kushina a drink. Here, it's on the house. Kushina accepted the drink. Thank you, Shaki-chan. Kushina spoke with gratitude before bringing the glass to her lips and drinking all the contents. But I know you were right. Shaki beeped a grin and looked over to Rayleigh, who unsurprisingly hasn't shifted his vision off Kushina since she entered the bar. You should know better than anyone, Kushina, I'm always right. The raven-haired woman spoke beepily, causing Kushina to growl. Stuff it, Shaki-chan, I'm still pretty upset over Roger's execution. Kushina revealed, piquing Rayleigh's interest of the woman even further. I never got to thank him. Why did you want to thank the captain? Rayleigh asked, earning himself the full attention of the red-haired beauty. Causing his face to turn red in embarrassment. Captain? You were a part of Roger's crew? Kushina asked with a small hint of astonishment. Rayleigh nodded to both questions. Yes, in fact I was Roger's former vice-captain. Perhaps you've heard of the famous Dark King, Silver's Rayleigh. The pirate spoke proudly, using his fame to build his confidence while talking to Kushina. Amazing, I never thought I'd run into such a famous pirate in a dump like this. Kushina spoke in awe while causing Shaki's eyebrow to twitch. A dump? The barkeep mumbled under her breath. I'm really not all that great. Rayleigh spoke humbly while rubbing the back of his head awkwardly. Though I'm still curious as to why you wanted to thank the captain. Kushina made a toothy grin that made Rayleigh's heartbeat increase. Well, I wanted to thank him for watching over my little brother and letting him travel with you. The red-haired beauty explained to the Dark King. Oh, so your brother was a member of the crew, may I ask what his name was? Rayleigh asked, thinking he most likely shared many adventures with Kushina's brother. His name is Shanks, Uzumaki T. Shanks. Kushina revealed while giving Rayleigh another grin. Rayleigh began to laugh to himself. Shanks, or little cabin boy, is your little brother? Rayleigh shouted loudly, using his hand to slap the bar counter. Now that you mention it, I see the resemblance in your hair color and facial features. Kushina joined in on Rayleigh's laughter and threw her head back from laughing. You know, Rayleigh-san, you must tell me all the stories and trouble my baka of a brother got in. Kushina laughed out, causing Rayleigh to nod. Don't worry, Kushi-chan, I have plenty to share. Rayleigh laughed out with a wide grin before stopping and looking to the smiling woman and realizing something. Even though today was the day he lost his best friend, Rayleigh was having fun and laughing. Is this the happiness the captain wanted for me? Rayleigh pondered in his own thoughts while picturing himself spending even more time with his new red-haired acquaintance. A few years later. It's been a few years after Rayleigh and Kushina had met in Shaki's bar. And since then, the ex-pirate and red-haired beauty had fallen in love. Though love has its struggles, especially love between a beautiful woman and one of the most notorious pirates alive. So when the duo married, few were there to witness the joining of the two lovers. However, this didn't bother Rayleigh or Kushina. They didn't want their wedding to be some grand spectacle, but Rayleigh thought it would be nice if the Marines would cease their pursuit on him. That way he could raise his family in absolute peace. Speaking of family though, Rayleigh and Kushina gave birth to a single child. A son by the name of Silver's D. Naruto, who was his father's pride and his mother's joy. However, due to Rayleigh being the Dark Prince, they often left the D out of Naruto's name. This was to protect Naruto, as being a member of the D. lineage and the son of a notorious pirate could paint a large target on the boy's back. Naruto himself was very energetic like his mother, but was also incredibly intelligent like his father. Already understanding many things about the world, both good and bad. Like the slave trade on the Sabati archipelago for example. A subject which enraged Naruto beyond comprehension. Since the small 8-year-old believed trading off another living creature for money was sickening. He even often asked his father to put a stop to the trade, but his father said the life of a few prisoners isn't worth risking his family's. Naruto knew his father was right, but that didn't mean he couldn't pull some innocent pranks on the slave traders. These pranks were something that were infamous on the Sabati archipelago, and Kushina and Rayleigh both were fine with them. Just as long as Naruto kept his distance from the celestial dragons. But this one rule which Naruto complied to, much to his distaste since he hated the celestial dragons. The blonde would cause havoc with his pranks and would never get caught. Though to be fair, Naruto was trained by his father at an early age to control the monumental amount of haki he possessed. So this alone made Naruto incredibly dangerous as not only a prankster, but as a fighter also. However, today the blonde wasn't accomplishing any pranking. Instead he was cooped up in Shaki's bar since today was his 8th birthday and his family had a surprise for him. "And Shaki?" Naruto called out from a bar stool. "Where are they at?" Shaki giggled while approaching the bar counter. Over the years she had remained friends with Rayleigh and Kushina. To such a degree where she became Naruto's surrogate aunt. "They are meeting up with someone special, then they will be here shortly Naruto-chan." Shaki replied before placing a glass of juice in front of the small blonde. "For now just drink." "Okay auntie, thank you." Naruto spoke respectfully before bringing the glass to his mouth. While the blonde drank, the door to the bar slowly creaked open. Followed by a loud laughter from a familiar voice. "Naruto you baby, you haven't changed a bit. Look at you, you're still drinking juice like a little kid." Naruto instantly stopped and threw his glass towards the voice. "Damn you Uncle Shanks." The blonde cried in anger as he looked over to his uncle, who was flanked by both the blonde's parents. Shanks moved his head to the side and chuckled as the glass passed by his face. "Oh my bad, I came here all the way from the East Blue to see my nephew and give him this." Shanks revealed while shaking the wooden chest, which was tucked between his arm. "Is that for me?" Naruto shouted loudly, leaping off the bar stool. However, the blonde quickly froze when he got a clear look at his uncle. "Uncle Shanks, your arm." Shanks looked at the empty space where his arm used to reside. "Oh so you noticed, it's nothing serious." The red-haired pirate explained but was suddenly struck over the head by his sister. "Aka. You lost an arm. I don't care if you saved some child from dying." Kushina scolded, still upset with her younger sibling. Especially after he continued to act so casually about losing a limb. Now Kushina-chan cut him a break, he lost an arm. "Don't knock his head off as well." Rayleigh spoke up, defending his old cabin boy. "Besides from what I hear, there is something special about that East Blue child." Shanks smiled, he and Rayleigh had already spoke about Luffy and the boy's resemblance to Roger. "You know let's not dwell on the past for too long." Shanks spoke up while walking slowly over to a table. "Let me show my favorite nephew his present." The man added in, placing the chest down. Naruto ran excitedly over to his uncle's side and waited impatiently for him to open the box. "Oh what is it? A dagger or maybe it's full of treasure from the new world." Naruto shouted loudly while jumping onto a chair. So he could be eye level with the chest. Hey, calm down Naruto." Shanks chuckled, his hand resting over top the chest. "This gift comes with a story first off." Naruto deflated from his uncle's words. "Oh I don't wanna wait for some boring story." The blonde mumbled and was quickly struck over the head. "Be respectful to your uncle." Kushina roared loudly, causing her little brother to laugh. "And you." Kushina growled before striking Shanks over the head. "Act your age, you don't know how many children you influence." Both Naruto and his uncle rubbed their throbbing heads and moaned in pain. "Ah-chan ni-chan, that hurt." The two males whined in unison. Kushina held her fist out. "Damn right it hurt, and if you want some more I'd love to help you out." The red-haired mother threatened, causing her husband to laugh. "Kushi-chan relax, you know they never change." Rayleigh pointed out as he walked over to Naruto and brought his son into a headlock. "Especially this guy, he's as stubborn as his old man." Naruto giggled while fighting his father's hold. "2-chan cut it out already." The blonde ordered in an embarrassed voice. "Alright Naruto I'll give you a break." The proud father replied, releasing his grip and smiling ear to ear. "Why don't we see what your uncle got you?" Naruto nodded and quickly looked to his uncle, who merely chuckled as he opened the chest. "Well if you wanna know so bad Naruto, I have to explain a few things first off." The red-haired uncle began, before digging into the chest. "You see me and my crew came across 2 special fruit, but unfortunately we lost one by accident." Shanks chuckled awkwardly, thinking of Luffy. However, I made sure to save this one for you." Naruto raised an eyebrow in curiosity as he watched his uncle with great interest. "The devil fruit." The blonde mumbled in confusion while he inspected the dark green peach his uncle held within his hand. "Oh, so I take it you've heard about them," Shanks stated in a matter-of-fact tone before tossing the fruit to his nephew. "They are quite rare and powerful, but as you may know, devil fruits also carry a heavy price for the individual who eats one." "Yeah, if I eat this, I wouldn't be able to swim," Naruto replied as he gazed into the fruit in some kind of trance-like state. "What's this if you eat it?" Kushina roared in anger, her hair swinging wildly behind her. "There is no way in hell I'm letting you eat a devil fruit." "Oni-chan, at least let Naruto decide," Shanks begged before he was suddenly stuck over the head once more. "I've already decided," Kushina yelled, showing she wasn't backing off her choice. Shanks rubbed his head in pain. "Damn, I still haven't met someone who punches harder than you, Kushina." The younger sibling mumbled lowly before looking up to his old crewmate. "Rayleigh, why don't you talk some sense into her?" Rayleigh looked past the two bickering siblings and sighed while rubbing his closed eyes. "Why would I? Nothing can be changed now," the Dark King replied, causing Kushina to smile and Shanks to deflate. "Because he already ate the fruit." "What?" the red-haired siblings shouted in unison, looking over to the blonde-haired child holding his throat. "Uncle Shanks, you didn't tell me this fruit would taste like shit," Naruto cried out, trying his hardest to survive the horrible taste that engulfed his taste buds. Kushina rushed over to her son and grabbed him by the ankles. Then by hoisting him into the air, she began to shake him up and down. "Hurry and spit that fruit out right now," the red-haired mother demanded, but midway through her shaking, somehow her son managed to pass through her fingers. "What the hell?" "Well, isn't that interesting?" Shaki commented while watching the entire scene unfold before her. Naruto groaned in pain and rose to his feet. "Ka-chan, why would you drop me?" the small child asked, looking up to his mother in confusion. Who was doing nothing but gazing down on him with a gaping mouth. Rayleigh watched the interaction between his wife and son with a small smirk. "Shanks, what was the name of the fruit you gave Naruto?" the father asked while trying to take his best guess at what new powers his son held. Shanks smiled at the retired pirate. "Well, it's called the K's no Mi, a Loja-type devil fruit," the red-haired pirate explained before finding himself in a headlock. "Shanks, you baka. Why would you give my son a devil fruit?" the enraged mother shouted loudly at her sibling. Rayleigh laughed while walking past his wife, who was busy choking out the famous red-haired Shanks. "So Naruto, how do you feel? Any pain or weird feelings?" Rayleigh asked, bending down so he could be eye level with his son. Naruto held his hand up to inspect with his own eyes. "No, Two-chan, I don't feel any different," the blonde child admitted truthfully, causing his father to nod. "That's expected, you'll grow used to your new body in time," the Dark King explained while pushing his hand straight through his son's chest. "You're a wind man now, but don't worry, I will help you train your new body." The new Loja user looked down to his chest, or to be more precise the empty void of space, where his father's arm was sticking straight through. "This is the best birthday ever," Naruto shouted loudly, causing Shaki, Rayleigh and even Shanks to chuckle. Kushina, however, was still a little upset and worried over her only child. "I can become even stronger now and become an amazing pirate like Two-chan and Uncle Shanks." Shanks smiled and broke out of his sister's hold. "Oh, are you going to set sail and try to beat me on the road of becoming Pirate King?" the older male asked, wanting to hear the reply his nephew had. "Pirate King?" Naruto mumbled the title in confusion before giving a wide smile. "I could care less about some silly title, I just want to be a plain old pirate." Shanks blinked while looking at the small blonde, whose father merely laughed to himself. "I don't get it. So you just want treasure?" Shanks asked, wanting to under his nephew's reasons for wanting to become a pirate. "No way, I'm not interested in treasure," Naruto proclaimed, stunning his uncle and earning the attention of his mother and surrogate aunt. "I just want to make new friends and have a grand pirate adventure." Shanks formed a small smile. Naruto's response wasn't like his own. Hell, it wasn't even something the blonde's father would have said. "That's a unique answer, Naruto, I like it," Shanks admitted before walking over and ruffling his nephew's hair. "I'm sure you won't only have your adventure, but you'll also become an amazing pirate." Naruto grinned ear to ear, looking up to his uncle. "Thanks, Uncle Shanks, for the compliment and the present." The young blonde spoke respectively, causing his uncle to wave him off. "Don't worry about it, Naruto, but I have to ask. Would you like to start your pirate adventure early and travel with my crew?" Shanks asked, again testing his nephew with his question. "Naruto, you absolutely will not be ... Hell no," Naruto shouted, cutting his mother off and giving his uncle a look of determination. "I'm going to get much stronger, then I'm going to make a crew of my own. Then after that I'll become the infamous Silver's Naruto, Dark Prince of the Seas." "Oh, and how will you become stronger?" The red-haired man asked, looking straight at the blonde with an emotionless face. Dusan has already trained me to use all forms of haki, and now that I've eaten a devil fruit, I'll become even stronger than you," Naruto proclaimed, with nothing but pure confidence. Shaki chuckled at her surrogate nephew's claim while lighting a cigarette. "I believe you can do it, Naru-chan." The raven-haired beauty spoke up before taking a puff from her cigarette. "I think he can too," Kushina added in, walking over to her family and smiling. "My little baby will become the strongest pirate in history." "Well, to become that great you'll have to become really strong, Naruto," Shanks explained in all seriousness. "You may find out that your haki and devil fruit powers won't be enough." "What are you talking about, Uncle Shanks?" Naruto shouted loudly, his anger resembling that of his mother's. "I'll be so strong when I master the K's no Mi that Marines will run by the mere mention of my name." "Your uncle is right, Naruto." Rayleigh spoke up, rising to his feet and walking over to the bar counter. "If you truly want to become strong, you're going to need a large variety in your arsenal." Shaki walked to where she was standing across her friend. "I take this as my cue." The barkeep mumbled before bending over and grabbing something. "Here you go, Rayleigh." Rayleigh accepted the large rectangular box, which was hidden behind the counter. "Thank you, Shaki." The aged father spoke sincerely before turning to his son. "This is from your mother and I." Naruto quickly jumped to his feet and scurried over to his father. "Thank you too, Chan." The blonde yelled happily, taking the box from his father. "Ahem." Kushina fake coughed, trying to grab her son's attention. "Oh, and thank you too, Ka-chan." The blonde added in, while already begging to rip the large box open. Making short work of the wrapping around it, Naruto lifted the top of the box open. A katana. Rayleigh smiled with pride as he watched his son lift out the sword he and his wife had purchased for him. The sheath and the grip were both blood red, while the guard was made of pure gold. However, when Naruto pulled the blade out, he was confused by its blackish coloring. "I can see you're a little confused by your new weapon. You see, the blade is infused with the one material that is deadly to devil fruit users. An incredibly rare material called Kairaseki," Rayleigh explained to his son. "So with that being said, tomorrow we will begin practicing your sword play." Naruto lit up with excitement at the prospect of more training. "Really too, Chan? I can't wait, I'm going to be really strong now." The blonde yelled excitedly before looking down to his new weapon. "But I have a question, what is the name of this sword?" "The sword has no name," Kushina answered, bringing her hands to her hips. "So you get to name it." "Really, Ka-chan?" Naruto shouted in excitement. "Your mother is telling the truth, Naruto, this sword has never seen any form of combat. Since you are the very first person to wield it," Rayleigh explained, giving the background on the katana. Shanks crossed his arms and looked over the sword with a critical eye. "This is odd, if what you say is true. Because I can definitely sense a strong presence coming from that sword," the one-armed pirate captain beepized. "I agree, that sword will make a great companion for Naru-chan," Shaki pointed out, giving the blonde and his new sword a smile. "That it will, Shaki, but tell me, Naruto, what name would you give that sword?" Rayleigh asked, curious as to what his son could come up with. "Or will you not name it?" Naruto looked around the small bar, stopping to look at each individual of his family. Finally coming to a stop when he looked at his new katana. "I'm going to call it Kurama," Naruto revealed with a cheeky grin. "Pretty cool name, don't you think?" "I think it's a wonderful name for a sword, Naru-chan," Shaki praised, causing the blonde to blush. "Thank you, Auntie Shaki," Naruto thanked respectively before he felt a hard slap against his back. "I think it's a perfect name for a baby swordsman," Shanks added in with a loud laugh. "Damn you, Uncle Shanks," Naruto shouted in anger, flailing his arms and new sword into the air. "Oh ha ha ha." Rayleigh laughed loudly, greatly amused by his son and brother-in-law's antics. Kushina quickly brought her hand to her mouth so she could stifle her laughter. However, her son caught a glimpse of her and her husband's actions. "Du-chan. Ka-chan. Why the hell are you two laughing too?" the blonde child cried in rage. "This isn't funny." "Oh, Naru-chan, you're too adorable." Kushina laughed loudly, finding her son's anger more cute and humorous. Naruto brought his hand into a fist and shook with rage. "Just you all wait. I'll become a famous pirate that no one will ever laugh at," Naruto proclaimed, looking down to his katana. "Me and Kurama are gonna turn the world upside down." "I'm sure you will, Naruto." Rayleigh spoke proudly, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "You're the Dark Prince after all." It's been 4 years since Naruto had obtained his devil fruit abilities. By eating the K's no Mi, and to say the blonde had made progress was an understatement. In fact, Naruto had nearly mastered every aspect of his fruit's abilities. Thanks to his father's rigorous training, Naruto has been able to accomplish amazing feats. For example, Naruto could turn his body completely invisible, an ability which made his pranking much easier. Though even more impressive was his newfound ability to fly. a skill which he would constantly boast about, saying things such as who needs to swim when you can fly. However, flight and invisibility weren't the extent of the K's no Mi. In fact, Naruto had managed to learn how to craft powerful gusts of wind, which were sharper than any blade. These wind attacks were powerful, but Naruto still had developed one skill more deadly than the rest. An attack that Naruto discovered completely by accident while training one day. This was the skill to drain all the oxygen out of an area around him, suffocating all that would be within his range. His father had labeled this attack as too dangerous for training, only to be used should Naruto need to kill his opponent. Naruto was a little upset at first, thinking his father's rule would hinder the growth of his K's no Mi, but eventually he gave in. Besides, Naruto also had to focus on his swordsmanship, an area of practice that his father took more serious than anything else. Rayliegh was such a stickler for Naruto's sword progression that the blonde grew very talented with his sword at a very rapid pace. This was mainly due to the fact that Rayliegh wanted Naruto to be exceptionally strong. Mostly because he knew his son's ambition to be a pirate, which was a dangerous lifestyle. Plus, if anyone ever discovered Naruto was his son, along with the rest of his heritage, things would be much worse for him than any normal pirate. For now, however, Naruto wouldn't be setting sail for a long time. Kushina had made it very clear that her son must be at least 17 before he could begin his travels. So for now, Naruto was stuck in the same boring Sabati archipelago where he has spent his entire life. Doing the same routine day in and day out. Train with his father Rayleigh in the mornings. Then in the afternoons he would study basic knowledge of the world with Kushina. He would cover mostly dull subjects like world history, navigation, laws of the world, and also touch up on his reading and writing skills. Though not surprising enough, Naruto excelled greatly in everything he did. Which made Kushina very happy, always going on about how great of a teacher she was. Regardless that the only reason Naruto did so well was because he was a flat-out genius. Though currently Naruto's routine was shifted off balance. His father had departed to a far-off island to gather supplies, while Naruto was left on the Sabati archipelago with Kushina. This unfortunately meant no training for Naruto, but his mother was also kind enough to cancel their lessons for a few days. In exchange, however, Naruto had to stand in for Rayleigh by helping his mother with an assortment of chores. This being the reason for the blonde dragging a large number of shopping bags, which were suspended in the air by bubbles. "Hachan, are we done shopping yet?" Naruto whined, causing his mother's head to slowly turn around. Kushina eyed her son with a critical eye, her motherly gaze causing him to shudder. "Don't complain, Naruto-chan, we are almost done. Besides, I know you're wanting to run off. So you can play with that little mermaid friend of yours." Kushina added in with a sigh, then by crossing her arms she began to walk off. "All you two ever do is get into trouble." "But Kacchan, it's not Kami's fault, people are always trying to capture her." Naruto shouted back, defending his friend. "Yes, I know, Naruto-chan, but that doesn't mean you have to nearly kill everyone who attempts to take her." Kushina replied casually, holding a single finger into the air and waving it back and forth. "Honestly, if you would behave once in a while, I wouldn't play so many rules on you. Like how you're forbidden from carrying Kurama around with you." "Boy. It's not my fault that pirate had it coming." Naruto shouted in his own defense this time. Kushina whipped her head around and growled. "He called you a snot-nosed brat, and what do? You sliced his arm off and tossed him into the ocean. And don't forget, he also threatened to rob Aunt Shaki." Naruto added in, placing his argument against his mother. "He had it coming." "That doesn't matter." "Yes, it does." "No, it doesn't." "It's totally does." Onlookers passed by the arguing mother and son pair with sweat drops. The two had taken up the entire street as their argument continued. "That doesn't excuse you for nearly killing someone, Naruto." Kushina finally yelled at the top of her lungs. "Kuchan said it was okay." Naruto interjected casually, earning a fist to the head. "Oh, what the hell? Your 2-sen is an idiot and I'll be damned how you turn out like him." Kushina replied loudly, however, her voice suddenly went very quiet. "Though you already act just like him." "What did you say, Kacchan?" Naruto asked, as he was unable to hear the last part. Kushina huffed in annoyance, her son was too much like his father for her tastes. "You know what? I'm not arguing with my 12-year-old son. If he should be cutting people's arms off. So let's get the rest of my shopping done." "Alright, Kacchan, just lead the way." Naruto replied with gusto, slowly beginning to walk forward. The two continued in relevant silence. Naruto was busy observing the streets for some potential pranks. While Kushina's eyes drifted around every which way until she spotted a very familiar wanted poster. Smirking as she recognized the face, Kushina looked down to her son and tapped his shoulder. "You know, Naruto-chan, I talked with your uncle a few days ago." The mother revealed and snickered as she watched the boy's eyes lighten up. "Oh, really? Where is Uncle Shanks at right now?" Is he still in the new world or has he decided to come back and visit? Naruto asked each question right after one another, causing his mother to raise a hand to halt him. Yes really, he called and informed me that he got another increase in his bounty, that's all he said. Kushina grumbled in annoyance, she was a protective older sister who hated when Shanks would share every bit of information besides his well-being. He's such a baka. No way Ka-chan, Uncle Shanks is the best. I can't wait to become a great pirate like him and Tusan. Naruto shouted happily, causing his mother to laugh. Sorry you are not becoming a famous pirate for a long time. So for now you're just gonna have to be my little Naru-chan. Kushina teased, ruffling her son's spiky blonde hair. Naruto retreated back from his mother's public display of affection. Ka-chan don't do that. People will never take me serious if you treat me like that. Naruto mumbled in embarrassment. Kushina brought her hands to her hips and pouted. Naruto used to never care when she would show her affection in public. Though as he got older Kushina quickly realized that he was starting to set himself off and trying to act more mature. Please, I'm your mother and I will treat you however I see fit. So why don't you just learn to accept it? Kushina spoke with a smile plastered on her face. She wasn't going to give in anytime soon. Naruto hunched over and released a small sigh. He knew arguing against his mother could be damn near impossible sometimes. Hell, his father and uncle have still to this day never won an argument against her. Alright Ka-chan, whatever you say, but I have a question. How long will Tusan be gone? Naruto asked, casing Kushina to bring a finger to her lip. I really want to start training with him again soon. Well Naru-chan, it's a 2-month travel by boat, but since your baka of a Tusan wanted to swim to the island and catch a boat on the way back, my guess would be about 3.5 months, 4 at the most. Kushina answered truthfully, her attention slowly moving off her son. Oh, that's great Ka-chan. I can't wait till he gets back, I have a new idea for my K's no Mi. And I feel like I need to improve my hockey some more. Naruto admitted, but frowned as he noticed Kushina looking off into the distance. Ka-chan, what are you looking at? The blonde quickly asked, moving his eyes to where his mother was looking. Instantly turning red with anger, Naruto saw a sea of townsfolk parted in half. Though it wasn't the townspeople that enraged Naruto, no, it was the 2 oddly dressed men riding 2 other humans, like they were some kind of horse. Celestial dragons. Naruto hissed under his breath. Kushina wasted no time grabbing her son and jerking him to the side of the street. Then by placing a hand onto his head, she forced him onto his knees. Remember the rule me and your Tusan told you. No matter what these men do or how mad they make you, you are absolutely forbidden from attacking them. Kushina reiterated in a low voice, while placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Attacking pirates are one thing, but attacking someone like this is just suicide. Naruto bit the bottom of his lip, he had always obeyed his mother and father's rule. Though he has saw personally what these men are capable of, causing him to fear for his family, mainly his mother. She wasn't as strong as Naruto or Rayleigh. Alright Ka-chan, I understand. Naruto mumbled in a low voice, flinching as he heard the gasps of pain from the approaching slaves. But just don't make eye contact, hopefully they will pass on and leave us be. Kushina replied in a low voice. Move faster you annoying shit. One of the celestial dragons shouted loudly, followed by the sound of a whip cracking. Naruto let loose a low and silent growl, his arms subconsciously turning into wind. Now son, be gentle on the slave. Unless you actually feel like walking on the filthy ground like a commoner. The voice of the second dragon spoke up before unleashing an obnoxious laughter. Naruto looked slightly up so he could observe the men passing by. The eldest who spoke moments ago was a large and portly man. With rosy red cheeks and dirty brown hair. His face resembled that of a rat thanks to his large front teeth, small eyes and triangular-shaped head. The second man, who Naruto presumed was his son, resembled a younger and slimmer version of the father, but not too slim. Suddenly Naruto's eyes grew wide as he watched the salve topple over, causing the son to roll across the ground. You stupid bastard. The son yelled, jumping to his feet and pulling out a golden pistol. A slave who cannot serve his master is better off dead. Please. I beg. Bang. The woman's scream went off in horror while a pool of blood began to gather around the slave's head. Naruto began to shake in rage, something his mother caught onto. So to calm the devil fruit user, Kushina gave his shoulder a squeeze. However, her efforts to keep a low profile were about to suddenly vanish. Oh well, look here, what a beauty. The son spoke up, leisurely looking down at Kushina. You can be my 7th wife. I've recently grown bored of 2 through 5. The second man made a chuckle, but did not speak. Kushina remained silent, refusing to raise her head. Maybe he wasn't talking to her. Or so the red-haired beauty thought, no hope. Look at me when I address you, worm. The man shouted, grabbing onto Kushina's jaw and lifting her head up. I am the great Saint Kozan, and you will respect me. So pronounce your undying love and loyalty to me. This is an order from your husband. Kushina moved her head to the side, still refusing to speak. She was in a hopeless situation. Why you bitch? Kozin yelled loudly, smacking the butt of his pistol against Kushina's forehead. Ah! Kushina cried in pain, falling to her side and holding her head. Praying she wasn't bleeding, and if she was, Kushina at least hoped Naruto wouldn't notice. You stupid bitch. Kozin roared, kicking the downed mother with great repetition. How dare you ignore me? Kushina remained silent, hoping the man would stop. Because if he didn't, the red-haired beauty knew what her son would do. Please Naruto-chan, remember what I told you. Look away and keep your anger under control. Kushina thought to herself as Kozin finally stopped his onslaught. Have you learned your lesson yet? Kozin asked, rearing his foot back. Setting himself up for another strike, waiting on the woman to speak. However, Kushina didn't reply. Her son was the one to speak up instead. Ah-chan, you're bleeding. Naruto droned in a low lifeless voice. His eyes focused on the red liquid pouring through Kushina's fingers. Shit. Kushina mentally cursed to herself. Things were going wrong very quickly. And now they were only going to get worse. Ah-chan. Kozin mumbled, looking to Naruto with disgust. So this bitch has a child. Well, we can't have any of that. Kozin held his gun right to Naruto's temple and smirked. Life is rough, kid, too bad yours is going to be cut short. The celestial dragon mumbled darkly, slowly pulling the trigger. Bang. The arrogant man smiled wide, but his smile instantly dropped. Naruto let out a smirk of his own as the bullet passed through his body. Then by grabbing the man's shirt, Naruto turned his left fist completely black. Let's see how much you bleed. Naruto shouted in rage, thrusting his hockey-covered fist into the man's face, shattering his helmet and sending him flying into an adjacent building. The other celestial dragon jerked his head over to where his son was sent flying. Then he looked over to Naruto and grinned. So that boy's a Loja devil fruit eater. A rather rare specimen to have for a slave, considering capturing one is very difficult. The elder noble spoke out to himself, showing the lack of care he had for his son. Sakazuki, I know you are still ordered to watch over us. Come out and capture this boy for me. Naruto looked towards the man with anger, still upset over his mother's injuries. However, now this man was spouting some nonsense about making him a slave. Naruto wasn't going to let that happen by any means. Though the blonde suddenly looked to his left. A powerful presence grabbing his attention. Are you positive, Kaden? He did attack your son, and by doing so he broke a couple laws. And you know how I feel about lawbreakers. The voice of the newly arrived Sakazuki spoke up. Naruto beepized Sakazuki as he slowly approached. He was a rather tall and muscular man, with a square-shaped face. He was garbed in an all-dark red suit, which at the neck had a light-colored flower-patterned shirt unbuttoned showing of his tattoo. Finally, he wore a standard marine hat over his short black hair. Yes, I'm sure, my son is an arrogant fool. Though if you feel the boy must be punished, have his mother pay the price for him. Kaden proposed, giving off a vile grin, pointing to the downed and bleeding Kushina. Naruto jumped in front of Kushina, taking a defensive stance against the two men. He'd be damned if he would let either of the two hurt her. Damn it, if only Toussaint was here. This issue would have already been resolved. Naruto thought to himself, looking over his shoulder to his bleeding mother. Sakazuki started to chuckle as he walked forward. Alright, I'll capture the boy and kill the woman then. The marine revealed casually. Naruto switched all his focus towards the man. Then by letting loose a growl he charged forward. You're not doing shit. The blonde yelled, coating his fists with hockey. I'll just defeat you and escape no problem. Sakazuki watched Naruto dash forward with a small amount of interest. I'm a young child with a Loja devil fruit and training in hockey. The marine beepized, lazily catching Naruto's fist with his hand. You're no ordinary brat, I can tell you've received training from somewhere. Though I'm curious as to where. Go to hell. Naruto screamed, thrusting his hockey-coated leg forward, intending to strike that man in his side. Sakazuki merely tossed the blonde over his shoulder by his arm. Then using all his power, he slammed Naruto onto the ground. You got spunk, brat, but you're 1,000 years too young to fight a vice admiral. Sakazuki spoke in a condescending voice while slamming his foot into Naruto's stomach, knocking the breath out of the small child. Now Sakazuki-kun, try to keep that boy in one piece. His value would go down if you were to rough him up too badly. Kaden called out from the side. Don't worry, I won't cripple the boy. Sakazuki replied, stomping a second time onto Naruto's chest, causing Naruto to shriek in pain from the superior weight crashing down onto him. Kushina slowly rose to her knees and looked to her son. She saw the pain covering his face and the vile smirk the vice admiral bore. However, her eyes drifted to the gun, which Kozin had dropped when Naruto attacked him. Reaching out with a shaking hand, Kushina grabbed the gun and held it up. Get the hell away from my son. The enraged mother yelled, finally knowing nothing could be fixed now. So she did the only thing she could think of, she pulled the trigger. Doing so with enough accuracy to hit where the man's heart was located. Then she fired again and again, never stopping until the gun clicked empty. Sakazuki remained still, his hat overshadowing his eyes. A red liquid visibly leaking out of multiple bullet holes. However, this liquid wasn't blood. "Well, what are you?" Kushina gasped, looking at the marine with fear. "I'm a devil fruit user, just like this brat right here. Though I ate the magu no mi, which made me a magma man." Sakazuki revealed, bending down to grasp down onto Naruto's neck. "Let go of me." Naruto wheezed out, unable to turn his body into wind. Thanks to the magma man's hockey-coated grip. Sakazuki ignored Naruto's requested and began moving towards Kushina. His free hand already beginning to drip magma. "I wasn't going to get involved with any of this. Headquarters did say I only had to assist Kaden if he called for my help." Sakazuki admitted truthfully, stopping at Kushina's feet. "But unfortunately for you, your son broke the law. And you assisted by attacking an officer of the world government. So for your crime I sentence you to death." Kushina's eyes grew wide as she watched Sakazuki raise his molten fist into the air. "Naruto, look away." The desperate mother ordered, but it was too late. Naruto watched helplessly as Sakazuki buried his fist into Kushina's chest, causing her eyes to roll over and her body to slump forward. "Ha-chan!" Naruto screamed out with all his might, trying to break the marine's iron grip. Sakazuki ripped his fist out of Kushina's chest and let the woman fall over. "She's left this world and soon you'll be wishing you could join her." Sakazuki mumbled in a low voice, bringing a hockey-coated fist into the air. "Welcome to the life of a slave brat." The man chuckled, striking Naruto over his head, knocking the blonde-haired child completely unconscious. Few days later, the Holy Land marriage wa. Naruto slowly began to open his eyes, while doing so an intense pain swept through his body. "Oh shit, my head." The blonde cried, clamping down on the side of his head. "You're awake." A young and unfamiliar voice chirped happily. Naruto groaned as he tried to adjust his eyes to the light. "Where am I? And why do I feel so weak?" Naruto asked the unfamiliar person, his eyes finally adjusting. Allowing Naruto to see a small brown-haired child, dressed in tattered clothing. Said boy was giving Naruto a forced wide smile while standing over top of him. "Hi, I'm Konohamaru and you're in marriage wa. As to why you feel weak I don't know, maybe you're hungry or sick." The now named Konohamaru explained, hopping onto his backside and sitting cross-legged. All the while continuing to give Naruto a smile. "Marriage wa huh?" Naruto mumbled, knowing very well what the city was. It was the capital of the world government. And the last place on the world he would like to be right now. "So I really am a slave, then that means dot." Naruto balled his fist as it hit him. Kushina, his mother, was dead. She was murdered by that bastard of a marine, right before his eyes. "Of course you're a slave. Why else would you be here?" Konohamaru asked, chuckling to himself. "Though I never got your name. Kaden-sama's guards just chained you up here and left you." Naruto looked down to his wrists and sure enough he found himself chained to a wall. However, Naruto also had chain-less cuffs around each wrist. "These are probably made from kairaseki, that would explain why I feel so weak." Naruto spoke to himself before turning his focus to a confused Konohamaru. "Don't worry about that, but my name is Silver's Naruto." "It's nice to meet you, Naruto. How is your collar treating you? I hope it isn't too tight." Konohamaru spoke up, pointing to the odd piece of metal around his neck. "I'd suggest to not complain about it being too tight. Kaden-sama will normally have it tightened even further." Naruto felt his neck and without a doubt, he found a metal ring around his throat. Though this wasn't just any collar, it was a mechanism rigged with a bomb. Something Naruto had seen on slaves around the Sabati archipelago. Whenever a slave was taken in public, their owner would hold onto a small chain, which was attached to the collar like a leash. So if the slave would try to run, the chain would be pulled out and the bomb would explode. "It's fine, thanks for asking, Kono." Naruto replied casually, trying to make the best of his current situation. "Kono?" The small child mumbled the shortened version of his name. Confused by what the blonde meant, but never breaking his smile. "Yeah, Kono, it's my nickname for you. Geez, have you never had anyone give you one?" Naruto asked, trying to ignore the child's smile. Which was growing more odd and disturbing as the conversion continued. Konohamaru shook his head. "Nope, I've never had one before. Well, Kaden-sama calls me bastard and little shit. Does that count as one?" Konohamaru asked, causing Naruto to frown. Thinking to himself who would treat a small child like that. "No, Konohamaru, it doesn't," the blonde replied, slightly enraged by what the boy told him. "But tell me something. How old are you and how long have you been a slave?" "Oh, that's easy, I'm 7 years old and I've been a slave since the day I was born." Konohamaru explained, causing Naruto to tighten his fists. "My mom was sold as a slave to Kaden-sama when she was pregnant. Though she died shortly after giving birth to me. Kaden-sama said that she passed a few hours after I was born. He said she died while polishing his parlor room. Naruto snarled in anger, but his features quickly softened as he noticed Konohamaru's expression. The boy's smile had dropped and for a moment, Naruto could see the pain and hurt he held within. However, Konohamaru quickly brought his smile back up and scanned the small room. Hoping no one had walked in and seen his frown. Naruto picked up on the child's odd behavior and crossed his arms, causing his chains to rattle. "Why do you always smile? I can tell you are miserable here." Naruto beepized, slightly surprising the younger child. "Don't be afraid to tell me, there isn't anyone nearby. And besides, I wouldn't let anyone harm you." Konohamaru looked down as he fiddled nervously with his fingers. "Well, sometimes if a slave will cry or stop working, Kaden-sama will have them killed. So it's best to always smile and work hard, you'll live longer that way." The small child explained quietly. Naruto's anger had well passed over its peak. Due to the information that Konohamaru had shared with him. Though he brushed his feelings aside and placed his hand on the child's spiky hair. "Listen up, Kono, it's okay to cry. I won't let these bastards hurt you. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Naruto spoke softly, causing a teary-eyed Konohamaru to look up. But nothing, Kono, just listen to me. We aren't going to be slaves for long. If I don't find a way to escape within the next few months. My 2 cents will come, and when he does, hell will be raised. The blonde-haired child assured, ruffling the boy's hair. "So for now just stick close to me and be strong. We will escape this hellhole together." Konohamaru wiped his eyes and gave a smile, but this wasn't a false smile. This was a wide grin that showed true happiness. "Alright, Nai-san, I'll be strong and stay by your side." The younger slave replied, causing Naruto to smile back. What's all this Nai-san about?" Naruto asked, slowly growing attached to the younger child. Konohamaru chuckled to himself. "It's my nickname for you, why do you not like it?" Konohamaru asked, his smile dropping. "Nah, it's not a very good nickname," Naruto replied, causing the boy to deflate. "But I'd be more than happy to be your Nai-san. I always wanted a little brother." Konohamaru's eye lit up with joy, something Naruto hadn't seen the boy do since they began to talk. "Really, you mean it?" The small slave nearly shouted in excitement. Naruto looked around the small dreary room he was in. There was 2 torn mattresses and a bucket. The only form of an exit was a large rusty metal door. Most people would be miserable and an emotional wreck in this situation. But from just showing a small sliver of kindness to Konohamaru, Naruto was able to lift the boy's spirits up. While also cheering himself up and keeping his focus off his mother. "Yeah, Kono, from this day on just call me Naruto Nai." Naruto replied happily, his eyes finally stopping and focusing on the small child. They had both lost their mothers, but now they both have gained a brother. However, Naruto had also gained something else. A hatred for a certain marine. "Hold on to your pathetic life, I'm coming for you, Sakazuki." Naruto thought to himself, never showing his true emotions to Konohamaru. Few hours later. Over the last few hours, Naruto had spent his time talking with Konohamaru. He had told the boy all about his life back home, including the members of his family. This of course urged the small slave boy to ask hundreds of questions. All of which involved either Naruto's father or uncle. But it wasn't every day you met a relative of 2 famous pirates. Both of whom were on the same ship as the Pirate King. Naruto had also shared how he consumed the K's no Mi. Causing the child to ask even more questions about what kind of kick-ass things the blonde could do. Naruto enjoyed answering the child's questions and talking with him. In fact, the more Konohamaru opened up, the more Naruto could see himself in the boy. "So Naruto Nai, I have a question." Konohamaru spoke up, smiling happily. Naruto beeped a smirk and leaned against the wall behind him. "Another question, Kono. Man, you're full of them." The blonde joked to himself, but motioned for Konohamaru to speak with his hand. "But I'm happy to answer any question you may have." Konohamaru looked down, slowly drawing lines in the dirt-covered floor. Do you really think we can escape?" the slave asked, his voice low and weak. Naruto closed his eyes. Konohamaru had been born a slave. He had never known any other form of life besides servitude. A lifestyle which heavily conflicted with Naruto's dream to live free on the sea. "Listen, Kono, I sure as hell don't plan to stay here long. In a few years I'll be sailing off to become a great pirate," Naruto explained, opening his eyes and studying the boy's facial features. "And I'd love to have my little brother travel with me, but first we'd have to escape here." Konohamaru looked up with excitement. "Really, Nai-san? You'd let me be on your crew?" the small child shouted loudly, jumping to his feet, almost hitting the short ceiling. "Of course, Kono, but first we gotta get out of here," Naruto replied with a wide grin. However, he stopped and seemed to blank out. Like the blonde was focusing on something. "Well, Naruto Nai, how can we escape? Naruto stopped the boy's speech by placing a hand over his mouth. "Listen closely, Kono, I sense a few people approaching. Act natural and don't give anything away. It wouldn't be good if they found out about my family or our plans to escape. The blonde-haired slave whispered, thinking for a moment if he should have actually trusted Konohamaru with his family heritage. Don't worry Nai-san, I'd never give anything away. The smaller slave replied. We are brothers, we gotta stick together. Naruto smiled, he knew his trust was well placed. Though his attention was brought to the door as he heard a lock click open. How's my new servant faring? The voice of Kaden asked before Naruto watched him walk into the small room. Flanked by 2 guards on each of his side. The blonde didn't utter a single word. However, he did take notice of the small pot a guard was holding. Just from using his eyes, Naruto could tell the contents were incredibly hot. Due to the steam rolling off the top of the pot. Is that little shit awake? The voice of Kaden's son, Kozin yelled from outside. I'm going to strangle him to death. Naruto watched emotionlessly as Kozin entered the room. However, the blonde had to quickly bite his tongue when he noticed the noble. Trying his absolute hardest to refrain himself from laughing at Kozin. His nose had been broken and twisted from the blow to the face that Naruto had gave him. While his left eye now sported a black eye patch to cover his lost eye. Now Kozin, what did I tell you about this child? He's special and cannot be simply put down like any other slave. The older noble scolded, bending down to Naruto's level. We are above everyone else in this world, but what of our fellow celestial dragons? What sets us apart from them? Kozin crossed his arms and looked off to the side of the room. The things we own. The son answered with a growl, already knowing the answer. Kaden let out a smirk and nodded. You are right, so having a slave as rare as a devil fruit eater helps establish our wealth to everyone in Marriagewa. The celestial dragon explained, clicking his fingers quickly. Bring me the branding iron. Yes, Kaden-sama. A guard spoke quickly, rushing over to his master's side. Naruto watched a man hand over a long slim iron pole. With some weird design on the tip. He then looked over to Kozin, who was grinning like a madman. Naruto didn't have to be a genius to know what was going on. Tell me boy, what is your name? Kaden asked, lifting up the blonde's shirt with a piece of cold metal. Naruto thought for a moment he could use a snappy retort or tell the man to piss off. Though for Konohamaru and his own sake, Naruto decided that playing along and being a good sav would be his best course of action. Naruto. The blonde spoke emotionlessly, while intentionally leaving out his last name. Kaden motioned for the other guard to approach. Well Naruto, I'm happy to welcome you into a life of servitude. The celestial dragon spoke sinisterly, dipping the rod into the steaming pot of red-hot coals. Hold the boy down. The second guard walked over to Naruto and ripped his shirt off. Then by climbing down onto his arms, he held the boy still. Though it wasn't like Naruto attempted to struggle. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him in distress. Konohamaru watched his new surrogate brother with worry in his eye. Remembering how painful his own branding was. Though the small slave was shocked, he watched Kaden press the hot iron against the blonde's chest. But Naruto didn't scream or cry out in pain. No, instead he looked over to Konohamaru and gave a small almost unseen smile. Naruto was going to be strong for his new brother's sake. Kozin caught a glimpse of this smile and frowned as he looked over to Konohamaru. He wanted Naruto to be suffering and broken, not smiling and happy. Most slaves cry out in pain or beg for mercy. Kaden spoke up, removing the iron rod from the blonde's skin. Revealing a large burn mark, which left the symbol that all slaves bore. I can tell you she'll be a very strong and dependable servant. Naruto didn't reply, but Kaden didn't seem to mind. He turned to Konohamaru and gave the child a stern look. Patch young Naruto up, then show him where the cleaning supplies are. Kaden spoke up, taking a small roll of bandages out of his pocket. Before he tossed them at Konohamaru's feet. He shall be taking the same cleaning shifts you do, but since you'll be working faster with 2 people. You can also do some landscaping around the estate. Konohamaru snatched the bandages up and moved over to Naruto. I understand Kaden-sama. The brown-haired slave replied, giving his wide and fake smile. Good and you? Kaden spoke, while pointing to one of his guards. Unchain young Naruto off the wall. Then you are to observe him and Konohamaru as they work. Also don't forget to punish them if they decide to slack off. The guard brought a hand to his head and saluted. Understood Kaden-sama. The man replied quickly, causing the celestial dragon to smirk. Alright, everything seems to be under control then. Kaden spoke happily, moving towards the door. Come Kozin, our morning feast is probably finished, let's leave the peasants be so we can dine. Kozin moved towards the door, where his father had already exited out of. Then he gave Naruto one final death glare, which the blonde returned with an emotionless gaze. Before the noble huffed in annoyance and stomped off. You know it would be best to be on Kozin-sama's good side. Though considering you are the one who defaced him and blinded him in one eye. I believe you're permanently on his shit list. The guard spoke up, unchaining Naruto from the wall. Thanks for the advice, but I really don't care what list I'm on. Naruto replied casually, slowly rising to his feet. Damn, it's even harder to stand with these Kairoseki cuffs. Konohamaru quickly placed his hands onto Naruto and tried to push him back down. Naruto Nai, wait, I haven't bandaged you up yet. Don't be reckless and risk your health. The small child attempted to reason, but had no success. I'm fine, Konohamaru, a roll of bandages won't help me anyhow. Naruto replied, snatching the bandages from Konohamaru and placing them in his pocket. It would be better to save these for a rainy day. If you know what I mean. But Naruto Nai, you should ... Naruto placed a hand on Konohamaru's head and ruffled his hair, halting the young child's speech. Don't worry about me, Kono, it's my job as the older brother to watch out for you. Naruto replied with a small smile, suddenly feeling the guard push him forward. Save the talk for later. If you're not going to patch yourself up, might as well begin your work for the day. The guard spoke sternly, leading Naruto and Konohamaru out of the small room, leading him towards the start of his life in absolute hell. 1 month later. It's been 1 whole month since Naruto started his life as a slave. Since then it's been a constant schedule of working, fighting starvation and being abused. Being too proud to admit it, Naruto was near his breaking point. He had seen terrible horrors throughout his small time in enslavement, such as small children being starved to death or slaves being brutally beaten till they died. It pained Naruto to watch all the horrible things Kaden, his son and their guards did. Though thanks to the Kairoseki cuffs, Naruto was so weak he could hardly summon enough strength to walk, let alone fight a large number of trained guards in order to protect some slaves he didn't even know. However, it wasn't like Naruto was exempt from these beatings either. In fact, Kozen took a great deal of pleasure in beating Naruto on a daily basis. The noble wanted to get his revenge on the young slave by making his life hell, but Naruto didn't care. The beatings hardly affected him, since his father would hit much harder during their training. Though when Kozen started to threaten Konohamaru, Naruto could nearly hold his anger at bay. Only once had Kozen made good on his treats. Naruto almost snapped when he watched his surrogate brother take a whip several times to the back. It wasn't a pleasant moment in Naruto's life, but Konohamaru did something that held the blonde from losing his temper. He gave Naruto the same smile of courage and perseverance that the blonde had showed him while he was being branded. Unfortunate, right after his beating, Naruto and Konohamaru had to continue working. This took a heavy toll on Konohamaru's small body, as intense working while bleeding out of an open wound wasn't healthy for a 7-year-old. But Konohamaru managed to push through his pain and survive, showing Naruto his large amount of willpower, making the blonde proud of how strong his little brother could be. For now, however, it has been a full week since the incident involving Konohamaru's beating. Currently the two brothers are resting in their small room, which Naruto had found out was located in the lowest floor of Kaiden's massive home. It was their own little slice of hell, or that's what Naruto referred their living space to. Naruto found it rather difficult to relax on the old worn-out mattress. Not only did it reek of some foul odor, but it hardly provided any cushion between the blonde's body and hard stone floor. Rolling onto his side, Naruto noticed his little brother figure. He was curled into a ball across from Naruto. His back was turned towards the blonde slave, allowing him to see all the marks Kozen had left on him. Just like Naruto, he refused treatment, saying he was alright. Though Naruto knew this was a lie, but he didn't want to give the boy pity. He knew that was something Konohamaru didn't need. Pitying him would only make the child feel worse and weak. Hey Kono, how you feeling? Naruto spoke up, his voice laced with concern. You've been pretty quiet lately. Konohamaru curled up tighter, causing Naruto to frown. So the blonde slave rose weakly to his feet, then he slowly moved over to Konohamaru. Kono, what's the matter? You know that you can talk to me. Naruto spoke softly, taking a seat by the child's side. It's nothing. The small child mumbled out, his voice sounding on the verge of tears. Naruto sighed and brushed a hand through his messy blonde hair. Look Kono, you're a pretty shit liar. So why don't you open up to me? I'm your big brother after all. Naruto spoke with a small smile at the end. It's just I've been thinking a lot lately. You know about escaping from this place. Konohamaru took a pause and took a deep breath. It's been over a month since you arrived here. And we've made no progress in escaping. Konohamaru moved his body up and looked into Naruto's blue eyes, letting the older boy see the tears running down his cheeks. I don't want to die a slave, Nai-san. I want to be happy, I want to see the world, I want to know what freedom is like. Konohamaru cried out as he balled his hands into fists. I want to be free from this place, I want ... Naruto stopped the child by placing a hand on his head. Kono, it's fine, believe me when I say we will escape. I promised you that I'd get you out of here. So have some faith in your older brother. Konohamaru took a deep breath and attempted to steady his rapid breathing in order to calm himself down. Alright Naruto Nai, I'll keep believing in you. It's just I've been a slave for so long, I don't want to build my hopes up only to fail. Konohamaru admitted, slowly wiping his tears. I know Kono, but like I said. No matter what happens, we will escape soon. My 2 cents shouldn't be another month or two. Then he will find us, and I bet even my Uncle Shanks would also come to our aid. Naruto explained, trying to refill the boy with confidence. Konohamaru chuckled a little bit, just using the notion of famous pirates storming the city to save him. Brought a great deal of happiness into his small heart. Though just as Konohamaru opened his mouth to speak, the door to their room clicked open. Then without warning swung completely open. "Get your sorry asses outside," a gruff voice demanded. Before the voice entered the room to reveal one of Kaiden's guards. Naruto beeped an eyebrow. He wasn't intimidated by the guard like most of the slaves were. "Why should we? Our work shift is finished for the day." The blonde-haired slave replied casually, not affected by the cold stare he received. "Because you little shit, Kaiden-sama demands that all slaves report to the main foyer." The guard replied, with a small amount of rage behind his voice. "Apparently he has a very important announcement, so get off your lazy ass." Naruto snorted as he watched the guard walk off. Silently thinking of the fate that will befall the man and his fellow captors. "Whatever, either way you're going to die, bastard. It may be done by my hand or another, but you'll die. Just like those 3 bastards. Kozen, Kaiden, and worst of all Sakazuki." Naruto thought to himself, darkly rising to his feet. "I'll make them pay for what they did. They will die by my hands and my hands alone." Naruto let a small smile grace his lips, then looking down to Konohamaru. He held out a helping hand for the child. "Come on, Kono, looks like we have somewhere to be." Naruto spoke up, using his normally happy and carefree voice. "Don't want to keep everyone waiting on us." Konohamaru took his older brother's hand and rose weakly to his feet. Never knowing what the older slave was truly thinking. "Yanai-chan, let's go." The boy replied calmly, before they began their way towards the foyer. Where Kaiden and his big news awaited them. Naruto was making his way up a tight spiraling staircase, and Konohamaru was following close behind, like he always would. Eventually Naruto reached the top of the stairs and walked through an open door. Coming out on the other side, he found his fellow slaves filed together. All of them standing in front of a large elegant staircase, which lead to the upper floors of the mansion. At the very peak of the stairs, at the point where it forked to the left and to the right. Kaiden was standing over his servants, looking down at them with a look of superiority. A few feet over to his left, his son Kozen watched the slaves gather, while giving the same look as his father. Naruto took quick notice of the 2 men, before he followed into the line of slaves. Who were all waiting for the announcement that their master had for them. After a few moments of silence and all the slaves had gathered into the room. Kaiden stepped forward and cleared his throat. "As you all might be aware of, my ancestors along with 19 other kings, formed what we know today as the world government. Altogether that makes up 20 royal families, for you slower individuals." Kaiden took a pause to gather his thoughts, while letting the information he was giving sink in. However, only 19 of these royal families actually live in Marriagewa. Like you all know, me and my son are a part of one of these families. We are celestial dragons. Kaiden took another pause and began to pace back and forth. The last family chose to return to their people and kingdom. They are known as the Nefertari family, and they rule over the kingdom of Alabasta. Unlike us, they are not world nobles, but that isn't important. Kaiden explained to the slaves, stopping for a moment to search the crowd of servants. What is important is what is currently drawing near. Can anyone tell me what special event will happen within the next 2 weeks? The room remained silent, not a single soul knew anything of any special event. It wasn't like they were allowed to read the news or know the happenings of Marriagewa. Kaiden sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Kozen, tell these fools what I'm talking about," the father ordered, pointing to the ground before walking a few steps back. Kozen walked to the spot his father pointed, then took a moment to collect his thoughts. "What my father is referring to, you miserable shits, is the reverie, or in more lame terms, a meeting between all the kings and queens affiliated with the world government," Kozen explained, speaking with a beefy and superior tone. "Very well explained, son," Kaiden praised, patting his son on the back and stepping forward. "But I'll finish things off from here." Kozen gave a bow and walked behind his father. "Now every year this event is held. One of my fellow celestial dragons will open their home up to the current leader of the Nefertari family. This is a sign of friendship and an honor for the family who gets to house the king," Kaiden explained. At this point Naruto rolled his eyes. The blonde figured out what this big announcement was. Kaiden had been chosen to house the Nefertari family. So now he was making this little spectacle to stroke his ego. "This year we shall be hosting the Nefertari family," Kaiden shouted happily, throwing his hands into the air. Waiting for his praise or any form of recognition. "I figured as much," Naruto mumbled under his breath. Not impressed in the slightest. Konohamaru looked over to his brother, impressed by Naruto's ability to figure things out so quickly. Though his focus was turned to Kozen, who started to clap slowly for his father. Soon all the slaves, save Naruto and Konohamaru, joined in. Hayden basked in his moment of arrogance before holding a hand high into the air, signaling all the slaves to hold their praise. "You are all too kind, that is why I've decided to shift your schedules around. When King Cobra arrives, he will be escorted by 2 guards and 1 assistant. I want everyone who normally tends to my garden to assist the king and his men while they are here," Kaden explained, earning a few nods and bows from certain slaves. "Also, where is young Naruto and Konohamaru?" A sea of servants parted down the middle to reveal the only 2 children within the crowd. Kaden smiled and began walking down the stairs. "Ah, there you 2 are. I have a very special job for both of you." Kaden spoke happily, making his way ever so slowly towards the children. "You see, the king will also be bringing his daughter with him. Her name is Princess Vivi and is around the same age as you 2. So you want us to watch after some spoiled brat?" Naruto interjected emotionlessly, causing Kaden to smirk. "And cater to her every whim, of course," the world noble added in. "Can you 2 handle this task, because if not I could always purchase a few more children slaves for the job." Konohamaru gave a bow of respect. "We can, Kaden-sama, we will take excellent care of young Vivi-sama when she arrives." The brown-haired slave spoke up, speaking up for himself and Naruto. The latter of whom would refuse to bow to any man, let alone show his captors any form of respect. "What about you, Naruto? I didn't hear you speak up," Kaden asked, ignoring Konohamaru completely. Naruto eyed the man, or more importantly the keyring around his hip, where Naruto spotted the key to unlock his Kairaseki cuffs. "Maybe if I'm quick enough I could snatch the key. Then there wouldn't be a way to stop me once these cuffs are off," Naruto reasoned to himself in thought, but stopped as he looked down to Konohamaru. No Kono could get hurt during the scuffle for the key. Aiden's lip twitched in annoyance, his patience growing thin. "Boy, answer me when I address you," the noble shouted loudly, gripping his fist tightly, preparing himself to strike Naruto. Naruto watched the man and for a moment prayed that the man would strike him, because if he did, then Naruto would snap regardless of anything else. He would kill Kaden the next time he touched either him or Konohamaru. "I said speak," Kaden shouted again in anger. "Yes, I will take care of the princess," Naruto replied in a dead voice, thinking to himself how much he'd love to end Kaden's life here and now. But ultimately now wasn't the right time. Kaden nodded and then clapped his hands together, satisfied that he had finished his announcement. "Very well, you all may return to as you were." The celestial dragon spoke up, walking up the stairs and away from the slaves. Naruto watched the man continue up the stairs with his son, quickly disappearing into the upper floors of the mansion. "I'm growing sick of this place," Naruto admitted, turning towards the stairs which lead to the slave quarters. "And I really don't feel like watching over some spoiled brat." Konohamaru ran up to Naruto's side and chuckled. "Nai-san, how can you grow sick of a place that you hated from the start?" the small slave asked with a laugh, trying to lift his older brother figure's spirit. Naruto smiled and ruffled Konohamaru's hair. He always knew how to cheer the blonde up. "You got a point, Kono, but let's go get some rest. We have a big workload tomorrow," Naruto replied with a smile, walking down the stairs with his brother in tow. 2 weeks later, Naruto stood amongst the crowd of slaves who would all be serving the Nefertari family and all their men. Every single slave was gathered outside of Kaden's large estate, formed together to make a path which lead from the front gate to the door to the mansion. Naruto was next to Konohamaru and the duo waited patiently for Kaden to return. Well, not really patiently, since Naruto didn't want to be there in the first place. Plus he had been waiting in the same spot for over an hour. So the blonde-haired slave was ready to snap someone's neck. "When is that stupid bastard going to be here?" Naruto growled under his breath. Konohamaru sighed and slumped over. "I don't know, Nai-san, but I'm getting tired of waiting," the small boy whined. "My legs are starting to go numb." "Yeah, I'm starting to grow sick of all this waiting around as well. Though I don't just mean waiting for that bastard Kaden," Naruto admitted before taking a pause so he could scan the area, making sure no one was listening to their conversation. "What do you mean, Naruto Nai?" Konohamaru asked in a hushed voice, already knowing his brother was going to talk about something important. Since Konohamaru knew that Naruto would always check his surroundings before he would start speaking about something he felt others shouldn't know about. "I'm sick and tired of this place, I want to escape soon. So I've devised a plan to do so," Naruto whispered in a low voice, leaning into Konohamaru and cupping a hand around his ear. "I want you to listen carefully, Kono." "Alright, Nai-chan, I'm listening," Konohamaru replied, starting to grow a little excited. He and Naruto always spoke of escape, but neither of the two have actually spoke of a plan before. It filled the boy with a small amount of hope. "Okay, Kono, this plan calls for a lot of work from you. So listen good and pay attention to detail. Naruto began, taking a slight moment to think of a proper way to explain his plan. We need one thing if we want to escape. And that is to remove the K. Attention everyone. A loud and familiar voice boomed, causing Naruto to stop speaking and jerk up straight. Allow me to introduce you to the Nefertari family. Naruto beeped his head to the side and looked over to Kaden, who had his son and several unfamiliar faces standing behind him. Suddenly Kaden walked forward and held his hands out wide. Please make them feel welcome and show them to their quarters. Not a second less after the celestial dragon finished speaking. The slaves scattered about and headed to the men they were assigned to serve. Naruto began to move towards the crowd and motioned for Konohamaru to follow him. As the duo walked, several slaves escorting some of the king's guards passed by. The blonde noticed two men with swords and a strange individual with an odd haircut. Freak. The blonde mumbled under his breath, showing his distaste for Kaden's new guests. Konohamaru snickered at the blonde's comment and looked over his shoulders. However, he quickly turned his head when he saw one of the guards look back and stare directly at him, wondering to himself if they may have heard Naruto's comment. Thinking that wasn't possible unless the man had some kind of canine hearing. The small 7-year-old continued to follow his older brother figure. Where is Naruto and Konohamaru at? An unhappy Kaden roared loudly, his voice breaking through the crowd of slaves. The two boys made their way into the crowd of slaves and reached the center of the group to find Kaden and his son standing next to an unfamiliar man. He was around average height with a tied-off beard and long curly black hair. He was dressed in long green robe with yellow edging, with an orange and beige sash around his waist and a purple coat to finish his attire off. Though the most odd thing was the small mess of blue hair which was hiding behind the man's back. Must be the king and his daughter. Naruto mused in thought, looking up to Kaden, waiting for the man to speak. Ah, here they are, your majesty. Allow me to introduce the two boys who will be assisting your daughter during her stay here. Kaden spoke up quickly, walking behind Naruto and Konohamaru and pushing them forward. Bow and introduce yourself, boys. Naruto and Konohamaru stumbled forward, causing Cobra to frown. However, Naruto was the only one to catch this frown. Greetings, King Cobra-sama, my name is Konohamaru. I shall be serving your daughter while she stays here. Konohamaru spoke up as he was the first of the two to bow to the king. Naruto grabbed Konohamaru by his shirt and jerked him into the air. And I am Naruto. The blonde said, refusing to bow to the man or let his brother do so. Come, Kaden, yell at me or hit me, please make a complete ass of yourself in front of your guest. Naruto added to himself in thought. Still remembering how he planned to kill Kaden the next time he struck the blonde. Kaden silently began to shake in rage, just like Naruto thought he wanted to beat the blonde. However, he didn't want to make a bad impression in front of the king. You learned some respect, Brad, just you wait. Kaden thought to himself, already planning on punishing Naruto when the king wasn't around. Naruto and Konohamaru, I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. Cobra spoke sincerely, while surprising everyone by bowing to the two slaves. Please would you both watch over my precious Vivi. Kaden and Kozen both sneered and were appalled by the king's behavior. Thinking to themselves what kind of king would bow to children and slaves at that. Naruto on the other hand was a little surprised. He was not expecting the king to greet him in such a manner. Maybe the blonde had judged the man too soon. Yeah, we shall take care of the princess during her stay. Naruto replied, speaking slowly as he watched the king rise back to a straight standing position. Thank you. Cobra spoke sincerely, turning around and pushing his daughter out from behind him. Please introduce yourself to young Naruto-kun and Konohamaru-kun. Naruto observed the young princess with a critical eye. She wasn't very tall at all, in fact she was around the same height as Konohamaru. Though from looking at her, Naruto gauged she was more around his age. He also noticed her beautiful light blue hair, which was a hair color that Naruto had never seen before. Admitting to himself that her hair went perfectly with her light-colored skin. Before he knew it, Naruto found himself completely absorbed in staring into the princess's dark-colored eyes, only stopping for a moment to look at her attire, which consisted of a simple but beautiful light pink sundress. Suddenly Naruto felt a sense of inferiority sweep over him. The girl standing before him was an elegant and gorgeous princess, while he was just a simple slave dressed in old ragged clothes. What the hell are you doing, Naruto? The blonde asked himself in thought, shaking his thoughts off the princess. You need to worry about escaping with Kono, not googling over some little brat. Besides, she's a noble princess, don't forget you are a pirate prince. We live in completely different worlds. Naruto was brought from his thoughts as he noticed the princess nervously step forward. Hello, it's nice to meet you, my name is Vivi. The bashful princess spoke up in a low voice, looking towards the ground for some reason. I'm looking forward to getting to know both of you. Konohamaru beeped a happy smile, to him the princess seemed pretty alright. She wasn't a spoiled demanding brat like he and Naruto pictured her as. Naruto looked down to his smiling brother, then the princess. His eyes lingering off to the king and his captor Kaden. "Let's go." Naruto spoke in a bored tone, growing tired of standing around and giving out useless introductions. So he turned around and walked towards the house. "Follow me, princess, I'll show you to where your room will be." Vivi looked up and looked back to her father, who made a motion for her to follow Naruto. "Go on, Vivi-chan, I'll stop by in a little bit to check on you. Also don't forget Pell, Chaka and Igaram are here. So if you need anything don't hesitate to ask them," said Cobra as he bent down and ruffled his daughter's hair. "Also remember everything I said before we came here." Vivi nodded her head and smiled at her father. "Alright 2-chan, and don't worry, I remember," the princess replied before turning towards Naruto and Konohamaru. "Don't leave yet, I need to grab my things." Konohamaru froze in place as he watched Vivi make her way towards the carriage behind her, where the luggage carrying her belongings was. Naruto looked over his shoulder and sighed. Kaden was fuming as he watched Vivi dig through the carriage for her possessions. Though the king didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, he didn't even look towards his daughter. "I better go grab her shit before Kaden loses his," Naruto mumbled to himself, quickly making his way over to Vivi. Konohamaru saw Naruto take off after Vivi and he followed the blonde's lead, both reaching the carriage at the same time. Reaching the area right as Vivi hopped off the carriage with her bag wrapped in her arms. "Dear princess, allow me to take your things," Naruto spoke up while reaching out for the bag in Vivi's arms. Vivi gave a small smile and shook her head. "No, it's very alright, I'm capable of carrying my own things," the blue-haired princess replied, walking past Naruto. "Thanks for the offer anyhow." Konohamaru stepped in front of Vivi, blocking the young noble's path. "Please Vivi-sama, just let us take your bag," the small sav begged, knowing Kaden was glaring a hole into the back of his head. Cobra noticed Kaden's angered expression. Following the man's gaze, he quickly figured out what enraged the man. Those poor children are just like Vivi, but look what this man has done to them. The king thought sadly, knowing very well what was happening. Naruto reached out for Vivi's bag and gave a hard expression. "Listen, princess," see the fat bastard with steam rolling out of his ears. Naruto asked in a hushed tone, speaking about Kaden. "If you don't let us take your bag, he will punish us for failing to take care of you. Honestly, I couldn't care less what he does to me, but I won't let him hurt my brother. Just because you want to act independent." Vivi looked down, her hair overshadowing her eyes. "I'm sorry, here, take my bag," Vivi replied, handing over the small suitcase. Naruto accepted the bag and turned his back to the girl. "Now you can follow me to your room," the blonde slave explained, already starting to walk away. "You know, I wasn't trying to be independent," Vivi spoke in a low voice, causing Naruto to stand still for a moment. "I was just trying to treat you two like people, not slaves." Naruto gripped tightly onto Vivi's bag before he continued to walk towards the mansion. Vivi watched the blonde walk away, a lone tear traveling down her cheek. Her father had told her about the slaves she would see during her stay. However, she would never imagine a child around her age suffering through such hardships. Not even truly knowing the full extent of his heartache and struggles. "Don't cry, Vivi-sama," Konohamaru spoke up with a smile, standing in front of the girl and earning her attention. "Nai-san might not show it, but he's really happy by what you said. So since you make him happy, I like you." Vivi brushed the side of her face, removing the tear from her cheek. "Alright Konohamaru-san, but why don't we follow your brother?" the princess proposed, looking at the blonde who was nearing the mansion's door. Konohamaru grinned before he gestured her to walk. "Please, after you, Vivi-sama," the small child spoke happily, causing Vivi to nod and start walking. As the two children walked, they passed the king and Kaden. Cobra smiled at his daughter, while Kaden continued to scowl. He was going to have Naruto learn his lesson very soon. Marine HQ. Walking passively through the open corridors of the Marine HQ was a single man. Who, after over a month of duty, had finally returned back to report to his commanding officer. As the man walked, he was greeted by his fellow Marines. However, he ignored the men and women as he passed by. For he wasn't a man to greet others with a smile or take interest in the lives of his fellow Marines. He was Vice Admiral Sakazuki, a cold and emotionally detached man. Who believed in his philosophy of absolute justice. In fact, he had such a great deal of faith in his beliefs that he would kill any man, woman or child to see his justice through. To say this man was a horrendous bastard was an understatement. However, there was one man even worse than him. A man who was not only Sakazuki's commanding officer but his mentor as well. This man's name was Admiral Danzo Shimura. A horrible marine who became famous during the era of Gold D. Roger. Sakazuki had been called of his duty to report personally back to Danzo. Which is the reason behind the marine knocking on the door to Danzo's office. Entering only moments after striking the door, not waiting for permission to enter. As he entered the room, Sakazuki nearly bumped into a pale slender man dressed in a white lab coat. My apologies, Vice Admiral San. The man spoke with a smooth voice before walking past Sakazuki and leaving the office. The Marine officer raised an eyebrow before he looked to the powerful man behind the large oak desk. The desk covered most of Danzo's body, but it still allowed Sakazuki to see the bandages around the man's face. However, Sakazuki quickly gave Danzo a questioning look as he was curious as to why he was meeting with a scientist. Think nothing of it, Sakazuki, that man doesn't concern you. Danzo spoke up, moving out from behind his desk, allowing Sakazuki to see the arm which Danzo had placed into a sling. Due to an injury years ago that rendered his limb practically useless. Sakazuki then watched as the bandaged man moved to the side of his office, where a small table with an assortment of alcohol stood by. "Care for a drink?" Danzo asked, using his only good arm to fetch 2 cups. Sakazuki walked over to a small chair and took a seat. "Why did you call for my return to HQ?" the magma man asked, wanting to get right to the point. Danzo chuckled to himself. "So that's a no on drinks?" the admiral replied, placing the cups back where they originally were. "I'd say take a seat, but you've already found one, I see." "For the second time, Danzo, what did you call me back for?" Sakazuki asked rather impatiently, causing Danzo to snort. Before he made his way back to his desk. "I can see you're still a man of patience, Sakazuki." Danzo chuckled to himself before reaching for a folder on his desk. "But in all seriousness, I've been skimming over your report from that escort mission you carried out. You remember the one, right? I ordered you to assist Kaden and his son with any request they asked of you." Sakazuki gave a small nod, he remembered the mission. "Yes, you made me look after those celestial idiots." Danzo gave a small smile, Sakazuki hated the celestial dragons just as much as himself. "Yes, that mission, but what I'm more interested in is the events that transpired during your mission." Danzo explained, tossing the folded onto his desk. "It says here you executed a red-haired woman while capturing her son for Kaden to keep as a slave. What of it?" Sakazuki asked, showing no remorse for his actions. Danzo's lips curled into a small smile. "You also explained that this boy was a devil fruit user who also had some form of advanced hockey training." Sakazuki lowered his hat over his eyes and chuckled. "So the boy intrigues you, I assume?" the devil fruit user asked, thinking back to the blonde child. Danzo spun around on his chair, turning his back to the Marine. "Maybe, but that boy does make me think back to a certain time in the past where a certain man with an incredible amount of hockey fought through the seas. He was known for his blonde hair and his superior swordsmanship." Danzo then turned back around with a smirk. "This man has been rumored to have been spotted in the Sabati archipelago. Tell me, Sakazuki-kun, have you heard of Silver's Rayliegh?" Sakazuki jerked his eyes up. Who hasn't heard of the first mate of the Pirate King? A man just as powerful as his captain, a man who unlike his captain is still walking the world free and alive. "What are you getting at, old man?" Sakazuki asked, with a mixture of interest and confusion. Danzo chuckled at the question. "What I'm getting at is something you're probably already thinking. What if Rayleigh was in the Sabati archipelago and just by chance he met a red-haired woman who he conceived a child with? Now that would mean not only did you give his son off as a slave, but you also killed his lover in cold blood. Now I don't know much about the so-called Dark King, but if I was you, I'd be fearing for that man coming for revenge." Danzo rose to his feet after speaking, then the aged Marine moved around his desk. "Though that's just silly speculation. Which in reality is nothing to fuss over. However, let's discuss something a little more important." Sakazuki took a hard swallow, he feared no man. Though Silver's Rayleigh wasn't just any man. He was a walking legend and, as the rumors say, a true monster in combat. More important than this boy. If he really is that man's son, we should take him from Kaden. Force him to show us where his father is. Sakazuki shouted in rage, causing Danzo to lean on his desk and laugh once more. "What's the matter, want to find Rayleigh before he finds you?" Danzo asked, rather enjoying his pupil's position. "Cause to be honest, I could care less about finding that man. So don't waste your time trying to discover if that boy is linked with him. Why you ... Please Sakazuki, spare me and listen to what I have to say." Danzo spoke quickly, cutting the man off. Grabbing another folder off his desk, but tossing this one to Sakazuki. "We have something serious to discuss." Sakazuki caught the folder and began digging through its contents. "What the hell is this?" the Marine asked, glaring at Danzo with anger. "It's your discharge papers, you are being kicked out of the Marines and stripped of your title." Danzo replied emotionlessly, walking over to the Marine side. "Why is this happening?" Sakazuki yelled, magma leaking out of his body. "We both know you're not on the best terms with Sengoku. So I may have altered your field report a little." Then showed him my edited version of what you did. Danzo revealed with a small smile, causing Sakazuki to jerk out of his chair. "Calm down, Sakazuki, and listen to me." "Calm down?" You're telling me to calm down? Sakazuki roared in anger, preparing to fight his former superior. You wrecked everything I spent my life building up. Danzo turned his back to the man, knowing he wouldn't attack. Yes, I guess I did do that, but not without reason. See, I have a vision to change this world and the government that rules it. Danzo began, as he stopped and looked to the ceiling. To do this I need a man of your strength and values. To work a certain angle for me. So I demolished your career so you wouldn't have much of an opportunity to refuse my offer. You're a bastard, Danzo, but Sakazuki took a pause and gripped his fist tightly. He didn't have many options to turn to, the navy was his entire life. I'll work for you, just tell me what I must do. Danzo turned back around with a satisfied smirk. My trust in you is well placed, Sakazuki. Don't worry, you shall be rewarded in the future for your troubles. The admiral spoke calmly, before pulling a small envelope from his sleeve. But for now let's talk what you will be doing for me. So tell me, how do you feel about dying? With Naruto at Vivi's room. Naruto walked into the medium-sized guest room. Where Vivi would be sleeping during her stay at Marriage-wa. Without uttering a single word. The blonde tossed the girl's bag onto the large and neatly made bed. Welcome to your room, the bathroom is 2 doors down to the right and the 4 doors to your left. Is where your father and his guards will be staying. Naruto droned out without using any enthusiasm behind his words. Vivi, who was standing at the doorframe with Konohamaru, huffed in annoyance. What's your problem? Vivi asked in a rather agitated tone, walking up to Naruto and tapping him on the chest. You've been nothing but rude to me. I've done nothing to you, so why don't you try and act a little more kind? Naruto brushed the girl off and gave a fierce gaze. Would you be happy living the life that I am? Would you be kind to someone who you don't know? Naruto took a deep breath before walking off. Just cause you aren't like Kaden and his bastard son. Doesn't mean I'll treat you with respect, people like you have to earn my respect. People like me? Vivi repeated the blonde's words. Her anger slowly rising. Me and you are exactly the same. Naruto stopped by Konohamaru's side, his lips forming a small smile. That's twice Vivi had proven to him that she wasn't like the other nobles he knew. Making the blonde think to himself that the princess wasn't so bad. Alright, spoiled Haim, don't forget dinner is in a few hours. Naruto replied, making his way out of the doorframe. Konohamaru will take the first shift in watching over you. Vivi's cheeks turned red before she smirked. Alright, Whisker-kun, see you soon. The blue-haired princess called out, earning a snicker from Konohamaru. On the outside of the room, Naruto rolled his eyes at the princess's new name for him. However, he quickly frowned as he noticed Kaden approaching. The celestial dragon was carrying a whip in hand and a scowl on his face. Seeing this, Naruto got an idea in his head. So the blonde slave started to walk closer to the man. Oh, are we starting already, Kaden-chan? You still remember the safe word? Naruto asked with a small grin. He wanted Kaden to attack him. Then the blonde would have a chance to finally kill the man. I swear, Brad, I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life. Now come with me. Kaden spoke in a hushed tone, not wanting the king and his men to hear him. Naruto looked to the man and frowned, he wasn't wearing the key to his shackles. This complicates things. The blonde thought to himself. Excuse me, is everything alright here? A strong and unfamiliar voice asked, grabbing both Kaden and Naruto's attention. Both slave and master looked down the hallway. To find a tall and imitating man with dark skin. With medium-length black hair, garbed in a long light green tunic that was overlapped by a large dark green coat draped over him. Naruto took an extra interest into the large blue sword attached to his hip. Thinking to himself about how much he missed his own sword. Kaden gave the man a false smile. Yes, everything is alright, Chaka-sen, I'm just disciplining a slave. This boy needs some sense placed into him. Kaden spoke smoothly, not wanting to give off the wrong impression. Even though now it was too late and Naruto knew it. Oh, that's wonderful, discipline is always needed for our youth. Chaka spoke up, surprising Naruto and Kaden both with his words. In fact, I heard this boy mumbled some insults at me and my comrades. Mind if I'm the one to deliver the punishment? Kaden let a dark smirk slip out, he could punish Naruto without dirtying his own hands. Please be my guest, Chaka-sen. The noble replied, pointing down to the blonde. Taka drew his sword and stalked over to Naruto. Looking down to the boy with a hard gaze. Then out of nowhere, he slowly poked Naruto with his finger. Right on the blonde's forehead. Now see what you made me do? Promise me you'll start behaving or I'll come back to punish you again. Chaka spoke in a tone that one would use when scolding a small child. Naruto smirked, he caught on to what the man was doing. Yes, I won't misbehave again. The future pirate replied, looking over to a fuming Kaden. Taka placed his sword back into its sheath before smiling. Good, now run along. The guard spoke before shooing Naruto away with his hands. Yes, Chaka-san. Naruto replied with a small bow. Pissing Kaden off was one way to win his respect. Or so the blonde thought before he ran off, leaving the two men alone. Where do you get off? Kaden growled in anger before he noticed Chaka walk past him. He's just a boy. The man replied in a low voice before he continued down the hallway, leaving Kaden to brew in his own anger. But Vivi and Konohamaru. Vivi sat on the guest room bed with Konohamaru. The two children were busy laughing and getting to know each other. Konohamaru has learned many things about Vivi, like how she was 11 years old. Only 1 year younger than his older brother. Konohamaru also listened to Vivi tell dozens of stories about her life in Alabaster. On the other hand, Konohamaru didn't share much with Vivi about his own life. This being not because he didn't trust the young princess. He just didn't want to spoil the mood. However, for the entire length of the conversation, Vivi wanted to ask Konohamaru about how his life was. Or how he became a slave to Kaden. Though the blue-haired girl didn't want to cross any boundaries. Hey Vivi-sama. Just Vivi, remember we are friends Konohamaru-kun. The princess interjected, correcting the small boy. Be sorry about that Vivi-chan. The small boy replied, awkwardly, rubbing the backside of his head. But I wanted to ask you something. Vivi gave a soft smile, which in turn caused the slave to form a wide grin. Sure Konohamaru, ask anything you want. Konohamaru looked down to the floor and rubbed his arm. Not knowing where to start with his question. What's the outside world like? Is it really as amazing as Naruto Nai always tells me? Vivi frowned, she didn't know how to properly answer Konohamaru's question. After all, the outside world is a pretty wide range of things. However, it suddenly hit her, why would Konohamaru ask such a question? Would it mean he has never been outside of Mariagewa? And if Naruto has told him of the outside world, are they actually brothers? Vivi quickly shook those questions out of her head. Yes Konohamaru, your brother is right. The world is a very wonderful place. The princess replied with a false smile, trying her best to keep the boy's spirits up. Why would you ask such a question? Konohamaru started to awkwardly fiddle with his fingers. However, an abrupt cough grabbed his and the princess's attention. Hello Tu-chan. Vivi greeted happily, waving towards the door. Konohamaru looked over his shoulder to the king, who was standing with his arms crossed. The small slave also took notice to the man's slight frown and felt his stomach begin to turn. Hello Vivi-chan, how are you and young Konohamaru doing? Cobra asked, walking towards the bed slowly. We are doing fine Tu-chan, what brings you here? The princess replied, bepizing her father. She could tell when something was troubling the man. Oh, I just got done talking with Shaka and Ingram. So I thought I'd stop by before dinner and speak with you. The king explained, stopping at the edge of the bed. Konohamaru-san, could you give me and my daughter some privacy? Konohamaru nearly jumped off the bed and quickly bowed to the man. Of course Cobra-sama, would you like anything else before I leave? The king sighed and bent down to the boy, placing a firm hand on Konohamaru's shoulder. Don't be so nervous Konohamaru-kun, I won't harm you. The king spoke in a soft voice, causing the slave to look up. All I ask is you and your brother be at attendance for tonight's dinner. Of course Cobra-sama. Konohamaru spoke in a more relaxed tone, rising up and darting out of the room. The king watched the boy leave with a slight frown. Listen to me Vivi, I'm only going to say this once. The father began to speak, still looking in the direction Konohamaru ran off in. Few hours later, in Kaden's dining room. Naruto stood off to the side, with Konohamaru and his fellow slaves by his side. They were all holding various plates, with large mounds of exotic meats and fruits. Unfortunately, the starving slaves were unable to eat any of the delicious food in their possession. Instead they were forced to deliver food to Kaden and his guests, while fighting off the hungry growls of their stomachs. Alright slaves, bring in the appetizers. The overweight celestial dragon ordered, while clapping his hands together. Naruto rolled his eyes, thinking food was the last thing the man needed. Regardless of his thoughts however, Naruto walked towards the table with his fellow slaves. One by one each person began to place down a platter of food. Naruto placed his down between Vivi and one of her father's guards Pell. Enjoy your meal spoiled Haim. Naruto whispered into her ear before standing straight up and waiting for Kaden's next order. Vivi growled under her breath, she wasn't spoiled and she didn't appreciate the blonde's name for her. Her father's guard Pell on the other hand heard Naruto's nickname and even though he knew Vivi wasn't spoiled, the name still gave the warrior a small grin. Konohamaru was standing on the other side of the table. He was standing between Chaka and Ingram. I wonder if Vivi-chan and Naruto Nai will start to get along. The brown-haired slave thought to himself, giving his brother and new friend a warm smile. Cobra, who was at the end of the table, facing Kaden who was at the opposing side, looked around the table with an honest smile. This is quite a plentiful spread Kaden-san. The king spoke in a rather off tone, he felt uncomfortable eating in front of starving slaves. Kaden grinned as he reached out for a piece of sea king meat. It's the finest food money can buy, plus you haven't seen anything yet. Wait till you see what my master chef has prepared. The noble replied, already beginning to devour the meat in hand. While he did this, Caden mumbled something with a full mouth, waving his right hand up and down. Vivi looked towards the man with disgust, as did the rest of her family and friends. However, Kozin, who was seated close to his father, spoke up. He is trying to tell all you slaves to leave at once. Caden took a hard swallow and discarded the Sea King bone, which had been picked clean. No, you fool, that's not what I said. I want everyone, except Naruto and Konohamaru, to leave. Caden explained, as he was planning to punish Naruto in some way. This punishment was to force Naruto and the one person he cared about to watch everyone eat while they starved. The king watched as one by one slaves begin to bow before turning around and walking off. Soon enough all the slaves disappeared, besides the 2 children. I don't know what this man is planning, but this could work for us. Cobra thought to himself, giving a nod to Chaka, Pell and Ingram. You know, Caden-sama, I'm curious about your 2 slaves here. Ingram spoke up, motioning to Naruto and Konohamaru. Tell me, are they your only 2 children slaves? Caden reached out for a glass of wine. It depends by your definition of children. The man spoke truthfully, taking a sip from his wine. Though if we go by my definition, then yes, Naruto and Konohamaru are the only children. We did have a few other younger slaves, but they all died. I'm sorry to hear of that. Ingram spoke sadly, looking down and wondering to himself as to just how many children died while working for Caden. Don't apologize, they were terrible slaves, too weak if you ask me. Nothing like young Naruto and Konohamaru here. Caden explained, showing his disregard for human life. L raised an eyebrow. Now these 2 are only children. They can't possibly be that great of slaves, since they are too weak for any form of serious manual labor. Taka pointed towards his friend and nodded. Pell has a point, why keep such weak slaves? I'm sure you could easily find some more capable replacements. That I could, but these boys both have their value. Caden replied, continuing to eat his meal. Besides, they are not as weak as you would think. See my son's face. He used to look like me when I was young and handsome. Though after little Naruto here punched him once, look what happened. Naruto let a small smirk grace his lips, proud of his actions. Naruto-kun must pack quite the punch. Cobra chuckled, earning a few nods and a grunt from Kozin. But all this talk has given me an idea. Caden raised an eyebrow. Oh, tell me, Cobra-san, what exactly are you thinking? The king rubbed his chin, then began to survey the room, taking only a moment to observe every person at the table. I would like to purchase your 2 slaves, Naruto and Konohamaru. The king began, revealing his hidden motive. My daughter has no friends back at my kingdom, so I believe these 2 would make fine companions for her. Naruto and Konohamaru's eye both grew wide. Did he really just say he was willing to buy them? L, Chaka and Ingram took their eyes away from their king, silently gazing off to Caden, hoping the man would believe the lie. However, the man remained silent. You know, Cobra-sama has a very good point. Ingram chimed in, trying to assist his king. Vivi-sama doesn't have many friends. So 2 strong and dependable boys like these 2 could not only entertain her, but maybe in the near future protect her. L nodded to his peer's statement. And if they would need any form of training, they could work with me and Chaka. Yes, we could mold them into fine protectors. Chaka replied. Caden looked at the king, trying to gauge the man's motives. You say you want friends for your daughter, who would also be able to protect her. That much I understand, but why do you want 2 of my slaves? It's simple really, slavery is outlawed in my kingdom. And I'm not going to make it legal just for my daughter. I could purchase some from the slave market. However, that would look rather bad on my character. The king explained, trying his hardest to fool the celestial dragon. So you want to buy Naruto and Konohamaru. All because you can do so without anyone wondering where you obtained them. Caden summarized, thinking he has the king figured okay. Precisely. The king lied through his teeth. Caden nodded and began to think to himself. Young princess, is what your father says true? Do you not have any friends within your kingdom? Vivi became a little nervous, Caden and his son creeped her out. But she swallowed her feelings and nodded. Yes, Caden-sama. The blue-haired princess spoke in a low voice. That's why I would like my 2 sons to buy Konohamaru-san and Naruto. Konohamaru became slightly happy at this development, thinking finally he and Naruto both could be free from Caden, even if they had to work for the king. Naruto on the other hand rolled his eyes. He could clearly tell the king and his men were lying. Or at least telling Caden a half-truth. Though the blonde didn't understand their purpose behind trying to buy him and Konohamaru. Well, if you want to buy them I shall allow it, but no, neither boy comes cheap. Caden explained with a vile smirk. Naruto was a little surprised by this development, not thinking Caden would agree to selling him. I'm glad you are willing to make a deal. So tell me, what is your price? The king asked, folding his arms. Money shouldn't be an issue. Caden smirked. Glad to hear that, now let me think. For Konohamaru I'd sell him for 350 million bili. Everyone looked at the man with gaping mouths. That's a serious amount of money just for one slave. No, Kaden-sama, maybe we could bargain a little bit. Surely this boy isn't worth that much money. Ingram spoke up, still a little shocked by the man's price. No, the price will stay at 350 million bili. Young Konohamaru means too much for me to just give him away. He has been with me since the moment his mother gave birth to him. Kaden explained, giving Konohamaru a dark grin. And even though she died giving birth, young Konohamaru has served me well. Though it was a fair trade-off, she wasn't much of a slave. Vivi brought a hand to her mouth, while Naruto just shook in anger. Both of them upset for the same reason, and that being Konohamaru. The boy who always smiled, even when a man was mocking his mother right in front of him. Had to stand and listen to Kaden's harsh words. Cobra gripped his fists under the table. Fine, like I said, money isn't an issue. Now how much for Naruto? The king asked, trying to hide the anger in his voice. Kaden brought a hand to his lips. Now that is a very good question. See, Naruto-kun isn't like most slaves, his value is pretty high. Kaden began, eyeballing the blonde slave. I would estimate 1 billion bili, but honestly I believe that price is a little low. At this moment everyone looked at the blonde with a questioning gaze. However, not a single person could speak. That's outrageous, how could one boy be worth that much? Cobra finally shouted, asking the question that was on everyone's mind. Kaden chuckled at the king's reaction and pointed at Naruto. You see the cuffs on young Naruto? They are made from kairoseki, a material used to cancel out ... devil fruits. Pell gasped, understanding where the man was going. This caused Kaden to smirk. Yes, young Naruto here has eaten a devil fruit and a logia type at that. So this makes him incredibly rare as a slave. Not to mention the man who captured him said something about Naruto using haki. Which according to him, is a skill generally reserved for people of Vice Admiral skill or higher. Kaden then scoffed as he waved a hand around. Though it's not like Naruto here could fight a Vice Admiral. Hell, him and his treacherous mother attacked one. Why don't you tell everyone how that played out, Naruto-kun? Naruto looked down, his hair overshadowing his eyes. Causing Kaden and his son to laugh. What's the matter, brat? You normally have some witty retort. Kaden yelled out, slapping the table as he laughed. Vivi looked over to the blonde and was filled with compassion for the boy. Whatever happened to him pained him deeply. I want to help him, but I don't know how. Even though if I did he wouldn't accept my help. The princess thought to herself. Cobra cleared his throat as he noticed Naruto's pained look. What happened with him isn't important. What is important, however, is that you come down on your price. The king spoke up, wanting to buy the boys and take them away from Kaden even more than ever now. The celestial dragon stopped laughing and gave the king a hard gaze. I will not lower my price, either buy them or don't. I really couldn't care less. Ingram turned to his king, knowing the man better than anyone. So he knew Cobra was still willing to buy the two slaves, but in reality they didn't have the money to do so. Cobra-sama, I'm sorry, but this is a deal we can't make. We have to back off. The white-haired man advised to his king. Cobra bit his lips. I know, Ingram. And I'm sorry, Kaden, but we cannot make a deal with you. The noble waved the king off, not caring about a thing. That's fine with me, Cobra-san. Vivi jerked out of her seat and gave a bow. Please excuse me, I'm not hungry. The small princess announced to the table. Naruto, could you and Konohamaru escort me to my room? Naruto pushed the girl's chair back into the table. Yes, we will. The blonde replied in a low voice, walking off to leave the men to their meals. Though everyone save Kaden and Kozen didn't seem in the mood for food either. At Vivi's room. Naruto walked into the large guest room, with Vivi and Konohamaru right behind him. Then without a warning Naruto slammed the door and pointed a finger at Vivi. Mind tell me what all that was? Why in the world was your father trying to buy us? Naruto asked in a low voice. Cause I don't believe the lies he was telling Kaden. Vivi looked down. Me and my family hate slavery, my 2-sen especially hates child slavery. Though there isn't much we can do about it. Slavery is everywhere, but he was hoping to at least but your freedom. Konohamaru nearly jumped onto the girl. Really, he was going to let us go free. The brown-haired slave shouted almost too loudly. Naruto and Vivi both quickly found their hands clapped onto the boy's mouth. Forcing them to lock eyes, causing Vivi to slightly blush. Even more so when she noticed their hands touching. Quickly backing away, the princess readjusted herself. Yes, that was the plan, but we didn't figure he would ask such high prices. That's Kaden for you. Naruto replied in an angered tone. He's a real bastard, but tell me something, spoiled Haim. Do you really want to help us? Vivi's eyebrow twitched. If you don't quit calling me that name I might just let you stay here. For now though, yes, I do want to help you. Naruto smiled. Vivi wasn't so bad, but getting under her skin was kind of fun. Alright then, you're going to help me and Kono escape. Naruto explained, giving the girl and his brother a grin. And we are going to use my master plan. Nai-chan, you mean the one you tried to tell me this morning? Konohamaru asked with a little enthusiasm, and Naruto nodded. Well, before you tell me any plan, I have 2 conditions. Vivi revealed, holding out 2 fingers. Naruto crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. Alright, let's hear your conditions, spoiled Haim. Vivi growled and held up a 3rd finger. Okay, 3 conditions. Don't call me that again. The blue-haired girl more ordered than anything. Earning a snicker from Konohamaru. Naruto rolled his eyes. I'll think about it. What's the other 2? The blonde asked. One, you tell me about yourself and start being nicer to me. And the second one I'll tell you after you are free. The princess replied with a smirk. Naruto grinned. He didn't have a problem with Vivi's conditions. So he held his hand out for the girl to shake. Alright Vivi, if we are going to be partners, let me introduce myself. Few know my name, so take pride in my trust. My name is Silver's Naruto, the Dark Prince. Vivi beat her head to the side. Confused by the blonde's title. Dark Prince? The noble princess mumbled with confusion. What in the world is that? Naruto smirked. It's a name I like to go by. Just like my 2 cents. Silver's Rayliegh, the Dark King and first mate of Gold D. Roger the Pirate King. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.